Good morning, guys. So with Suicide Prevent Day being over the weekend, I wanted to touch upon this today with you, and I wanted to bring it to you from a concept of school, as I always do. And so one of the first things I wanted to share and discuss with you today is one of the biggest misconceptions that happens in schools. And then I'd also like to touch upon language. Now, I think I've talked about language before, but I'll touch upon it very briefly again today. So the biggest misconception that happens in schools is actually around safeguarding practices and how that interferes with conversations around suicide in schools. So when you do your safeguarding training, one of the first things that they teach you, or they explain to you rather, is that you're not to ask a leading question. You're not to put words in the child's mouth. You're not to ask questions. You're not to ask leading questions. You just allow that child to come and, talk to you about whatever that safeguarding issue is, or whatever's going on for that child. And you're not to ask a leading question. So sometimes when there are concerns for a child or young person who is experiencing suicidal ideation or has plans to end their own life, people are not asking a direct question of, are you talking about ending your own life? Are you going to take your own life? That kind of direct question, because they fear that it compromises safeguarding practices. So I can't ask that question because it's a leading question, or I've put those words in that child's mouth. That is not the case when you are having a conversation with a child or a young person around ending their own life. We need to be direct, and we need to ask that direct question. It's important that you do so, because in asking that direct question, it leads to an open conversation with that child and young person, which may go down the route of, yes, I am talking about ending my own life, and then we can start thinking about gauging risk and having further conversations with that child or young person. Or sometimes I've been working with children and young people, and I've been a little bit concerned. I've asked that direct question and they've gone, oh my goodness, no, that is not what I'm talking about at all. I'm just, feeling particularly overwhelmed today and I don't know how to process that, or there's been other things going on for that child and that young person. Likewise, I have asked that direct question sometimes, and I've also seen children take the biggest sigh of relief ever because they haven't had to say it themselves, and somebody has registered and connected with them and knows them well enough to know that something's not quite right here. And having asked that direct question, they've gone, oh, thank goodness for that. Thank you for, and then we've had that direct conversation and we've explored what's going on for that child and that young person. So it's really, really important that you ask that direct question. It is not a leading question. It is not breaking any safeguarding rules or practices or compromising anything from a safeguarding nature. We must ask that direct question. There's a lot of difficulty sometimes in schools, because what I also see quite a lot, and what I've experienced quite a lot, is panic when this crops up. So a child or a young person goes to a member of staff in school who, for whatever reason, they feel they can have this conversation with, and suddenly then it's, oh my goodness, you need to come and speak to so-and-so, and there's a panic and there's a rush and there's because that person really doesn't know how to process or support the child or young person, because it's this concept of suicide and everybody seems to have this little bit of panic when it comes to this. It's really important that where possible you really try to remain calm and connected if a child or young person comes to you and discloses that they have plans to end their own life, or they are having thoughts of taking their own life. It's really important that you try to remain as calm and collected as you can do. Now, we are only human, we are all human beings, and sometimes we're taken off guard, and sometimes there is that little minute of, oh, okay. And that is okay, but have that conversation. So don't just go into sheer panic and then we're dragging the child off to somebody else and somebody else is having that conversation. That's really unhelpful. That can really lead to that child feeling even more overwhelmed or ashamed or embarrassed, or feelings of it's wrong and I shouldn't think this way. That's not helpful. It's much better for yourself and that child or young person for you to just explain to the child, okay, I hear what you're saying to me. I don't feel I'm the best person to have this conversation with you, or I'm unsure of how to proceed with this conversation. Is it okay if we speak to XYZ? In doing so, you're engaging with that child. You're letting that child be aware of things that are coming. When you just drag a child off to go somewhere else and talk to someone else, that child might not want to go and talk to that child, that member of staff. They've come to you for a reason. Now, it's your boundaries, and your boundaries are very important, of course, in your own mental health and well-being is important, of course, and that's why it's important you have a conversation. Don't just take a child to somebody else and then expect that child to talk to the other person because they came to you. So it may very well be that the child will say, actually, no, I don't want to go and talk to that other person. And then perhaps there needs to be a different conversation that takes place and that happens. So be open with the children and the young people that you're supporting and that you're working with. I have very often had conversations with some children and young people where I myself have gone, I need to pause for some breath right now. And let's do that together. Let's explore that together. And then we've reconvened, a few minutes later when we've both found that time to pause. That's okay. We're all human beings. That is okay. And finally, the other thing to be mindful and aware of is language. So when we are talking about suicide, when we are talking about children taking their own life or ending their own life, language that we use is really, really important. So we try to steer away from language like commit suicide, because commit has a heavy focus on it being a crime, and it's not a crime. It can really lead to children and young people feeling ashamed again or embarrassed or not wanting to come and talk to you because I've committed, and it's a crime. So we try to shift away from that language. We talk about more so language around, we can use the word suicide. It's okay to use the word suicide. It's okay to use, other language like end your own life, take your own life, that kind of language. Try to steer away from that word commit because it's really unhelpful for everybody that's involved with that conversation, including parents and families and carers as well. So have a think and have a reflect upon all of that today. Like I say, it's really important that these practices are in place in your school. It's important that this training is in place in your school. If you are looking for some training around suicide prevent training for your school, Papyrus are probably one of the best that you can seek some training from. They do lots of different options. They do Assist, they do Spock, they do a Speak one, they do lots and lots of different ones. So head over to there and you'll probably find that helpful as well. My role previously was working with very vulnerable children and young people, delivering suicide interventions and supporting children and young people within schools as well. So if there's anything that I can help with, as always, give us a shout and let us know. Otherwise, have a great week, and I'll touch base with you all again on Thursday for Top Tips Thursday. Bye.